Everything you need to know in less time than it takes to boil an egg. Blender is an open source 3D modeling and animation software. What you see when you first open Blender is the default layout. There are many other layouts for various tasks. This default layout is used for most modeling work. It contains 5 rectangular areas called editors. Each editor also has a header, though sometimes the header is more of a footer. All editors can be changed, resized, moved, customized, and totally screwed up, so don't touch them for now. The main toolbar at the top is called the Info editor. It is called Info because besides the typical main menu functions, it contains information about the scene. How many vertices, faces, and triangles the scene contains, and other tidbits that you should pay attention to as you model. Note that modeling is mostly done in quads, but computers render triangles. The more tries the processor must render, the more time and power it will require. In the middle of the scene is the 3D view. This is where the magic happens. Besides the header toolbar at the bottom, the 3D view also contains 2 side menus. Pressing T shows and hides the tool shelf on the left, and pressing N shows and hides the properties on the right. T and N, remember those. Blender is full of important shortcut keys, which you must memorize. In the middle of the cube, you probably see a widget of 3 arrows, red, green, and blue. These point down the X, Y, and Z axis. Memorize these colors. It is useful to know a direction with a quick glance at the color. This little widget can be used to drag an object with the mouse. However, the keyboard shortcuts are faster than most mouse actions. Don't learn bad habits. In fact, I suggest that you hide the widget by pressing Control Spacebar. Whenever you press a shortcut key, like this Control Spacebar, the mouse pointer must be hovering over the window or area of the screen in which the command is intended to act. All the shortcut keys I discuss here are for the 3D view. So as a modeler, your left hand is always on the keyboard, ready to hit all those memorized shortcut keys, and your right hand is on the mouse, which is hopefully a 3-button mouse with a wheel. Blender is designed for it. Clicking buttons and dragging sliders is achieved, as you might expect, with the left mouse button. Clicking objects or parts of objects in the 3D view, however, is done with the right mouse button. Seems counterintuitive at first, but with practice you will get used to it. In the 3D view, the left mouse button positions the 3D cursor. If you accidentally move the 3D cursor and want it back to the center, press Shift-S to bring up the snap menu and click Cursor to Center. Shift-S. Again, your mouse has to be over the 3D view window when you press this. To rotate your view, hold down the middle mouse button and move your mouse. Pan is quite similar, except hold down Shift first. Zoom with the mouse wheel. The number pad also controls view. 7, 1, and 3 switch between top, front, and right views. Switching views can be very useful during modeling. Number pad 5 toggles ortho and perspective. Number pad period centers the view on the selected object. The number pad keys 8, 4, 6, and 2 act as arrows and rotate the view similar to holding the middle mouse button. There are other view shortcut keys and even more view controls in the view menu at the bottom of the 3D view in the header. Now let's make a simple house. Right-click the cube in the middle of the screen. It's highlighted in yellow to indicate that it is selected. Press X or Delete to remove it and approve. Press Shift-A to bring up the Add menu and choose Mesh Cube. A new cube will be created at the 3D cursor. Now you know how to delete and add. Let's change the name to House. Now press Tab. Tab is the God key. Pressing it just took you inside the selected object to the Edit mode. Pressing Tab again would get you back out of Edit to Object mode. But don't do that. Let's play God for a while. By default, the cube is 2 units large. We want to move it 1 unit up. We don't want our house buried in the ground. Press G to grab and move or translate. Press Z to restrain the move to the Z axis. Move up so that the object is just above the plane. Click or press Enter to set it down. On the right, we can edit the translate to a more exact unit. No house should be perfectly cubic. Let's make it wider and deeper, but leave the height the same for now. If the house is not selected, press A to select all. Press S to scale. Press Shift-Z to restrain the scaling to the X and Y axis, excluding the Z. Now let's add a roof. Press 1 to switch to front view. Now we can't see the back verts. Click the Limit Selection to Visible button in the header. Press C for Circle Select and paint a selection over 2 of the top verts on the right side. Press E to extrude. Press X to limit extrusion along the X axis. Enter 0.2 and press Enter. We have just created the eaves or soffits on one side of the house. We will do the same on the other side, but in a bit of a different way. In the header, there are 3 buttons for selecting verts, edges, or faces. Click Edge. The shortcut key way to do this is to press Control-Tab and then 2. Now right-click the opposite edge. Obviously selecting 2 adjacent verts accomplishes the same thing as selecting an edge. Press E to extrude. Press Escape to complete the extrusion without changing position, essentially creating overlapping verts called doubles. Enter -0.2 in the tool shelf. Press Control-Tab and 3 to switch to Face Select mode. Select the top faces. Press E to extrude up as high as we want the roof to be. Press Control-Tab 1 to switch back to Vert Selector, and A to deselect all. Press B for Box or Border Select, and drag a box around the back verts. Press Alt-M to merge and choose Apt Center. Do this for the front verts as well. As we rotate the view, we can see that the soffits are now hollow. Extrusion pushes selected faces up, so when we extruded the roof, we lost these faces. Well, that is an easy fix. Select the 4 verts and press F for Make Face. Not bad. Our cube is starting to look like a house. The only problem is some of our faces seem to be shading wrong. They are inside out. Extruding a single edge, like we did for the soffits, confused Blender. It didn't know which was the front and which was back. This directional vector is called the normals. Normally, normals face out from an object. Select all and press Ctrl-N to recalculate the normals. That fixed it. Let's add a door. Press Ctrl-R to loop, cut, and slide. Align the mouse so that the loop is cut around the house. Click to accept. Now we can slide the loop up to where the top of the door will be. Click again to finish the loop, cut, and slide. Press Ctrl R again. Align the mouse so that a line is drawn vertically up the house. Usually this command will cut a loop entirely around the object, but in this case we created triangles at the top when we merged. The command does not know how to cut through the tries, so it stops. In case you were wondering, this is why modeling is done in quads and not in tries. If we scroll the wheel, we can add multiple cuts, so we can add the two sides of the door at the same time. Click or press Enter to complete the cut. I don't really want to slide the door to the side, so I pressed Escape to skip the slide part. If we had planned better, we could have merged the roof peaks after adding the geometry for the door. Now we are left with a polygon or poly at the peak that has 5 sides. Older version of Blender would not have allowed this at all, but thanks to some bright minds, they have enabled modelers to stretch the rule. Still, it is best to clean this up, especially if we are modeling for a game where only tries are allowed. So to clean up these 5-sided polys, let's slice them into triangles and quads with the knife tool, the letter K. Carefully click on 2 verts and press Enter. We can make the doorway actually look a little more like a door by extruding it in a bit. I want a diamond window in the peak. Let's see if we can do this a different way. Tab out of Edit mode. Shift A to add a new cube and scale it down to the size of the window. Press R to rotate and X to restrain the rotation around the X axis. Enter 45 and press Enter. Now move it into the peak of the house as far in as we want the window to be set. Select the house. In the Properties window on the right, there is a toolbar with a little wrench in it. This stands for modifiers. These modifiers can add detail to the object for us. In this case, we want to add a Boolean modifier. In Object, we select the window cube and change to Difference. This will subtract the space occupied by the window cube from the house. We can't really see this now because the window cube is in the way. If we move the window cube, we still can't see because now the window cube is in a different place. Modifiers are living. They are not set until Apply is pressed. Then the modifier is baked in. Now we can move or delete the window cube and the modification remains. Blender added the geometry that it felt was required to add the window. In the old days, this would create a mess of geometry. Now with Blender's ability to handle complex polys, it looks a lot cleaner. Keep an eye on your tries though. Sometimes a boolean can add a lot. I have shown you the 3 main transform tools, Translate, or Grab as I prefer to call it, Scale, and Rotate, G, S, and R. The tool shelf offers a few more. Do you remember that we pressed the Tab key to enter Edit mode? In Object mode, there are many different tools and shortcut keys, but G, S, and R do the same function in both modes. Often during modeling, you want to add more geometry to work with. The easiest way to gain geometry is to click the Subdivide button in the tool shelf. This will chop all quads and tries into 4. Note that Subdivide will not chop polys of 5 or more sides. Keep an eye on your try count. Subdividing really adds up fast. Subdivide does not change the shape of the object. It merely adds polys for you to use to model more detail. But over in modifiers, there is a subdivide which acts quite differently. The modifier subdivide essentially rounds off the corners. You can even plug in a different number of subdivisions for the view and for the render. Press F12 to see the render. Even with a subdivision of 4, the bubble house still looks a bit blocky. Press Escape to return to the 3D view. In the tool shelf, click the option for Smooth Shading. Render again. Much better. If we wanted a bubble house. But I have changed my mind. I want to cancel this modifier. That too is easy, since modifiers are not baked in unless applied. Simply click the X. Our house is still gray. This won't do. We need to add a material, an image file wrapped around it. To do this, we need to first unwrap the house, like unfolding a box, a process called UV unwrapping. Let's change to UV Editing Layout. On one side appears a new window with a flat plane. This represents the unfolded version of the object. Open the Shading UVs tab. Blender needs to be told how to translate this 3D object into the 2D plane. We need to define seams around our house to fold it down flat. We can do this in such a way that the house remains in one piece, or we can break it up. I will keep the walls connected at the floor, but separate the roof into 2 pieces. Mark these seams and then unwrap. Because I separated the roof, I can stack these 2 pieces and use the same section of the map for both identical roof halves. After unwrapping, I can export this UV layout to an image file and go to Photoshop to make my house matte. Okay, here is the house image I have created. I saved it as housematte.png. Blender offers several rendering engines. The default is Blender Render, but we will now switch over to Cycles, which is becoming much more popular. With Cycles, we define object textures and materials differently. Let's switch to Compositing Layout and make sure that Shader Nodes is selected. Now, let's go to the Materials section in Properties window. This is the one that looks like a small checkered sphere with a little gloss to it. Materials are what make up the object. This house is not made of glass, and it has no shine. It is simply a flat painted house, so it will be made of a diffuse material, which is the default. Now we are beginning to build the rendering outline for the selected objects. The node on the right represents the final output render. The node connected to it represents the material. By default, it's colored white. Select Add, Texture, Image Texture. Now we have a new node to replace the color. Drag the nodes together to make this texture node tied to the color of the material. Okay, now let's change the texture to the UV mapped image that we created. And render with, what is that key again? Press spacebar and type render. There it is. So press F12 and check out our final result.